Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 108th class in this series on the Bhagavad-gita. I'm Hari-kirtana, and as always, it's a great pleasure for me to be here with you, an honor to have you here with me. And I will, for the 108th time, ask you to raise your hands in order to let me know that I can be heard. Thank you all very, very much. It's wonderful to see so many of you live here this evening. And believe it or not, there are still people who are coming to the satsang for the very first time. And so I will, as is our tradition, go through the little bit of housekeeping in order to make sure everybody knows how things work around here. You can adjust your audio settings and your viewing options in the menu, which may be in the upper right-hand corner, or it may be wherever you put it. You do not have to worry about your microphone or video camera. I cannot see or hear you, but if you would like to be heard, please type your comments and questions into the chat, as Annie already has. Annie, nice to see you. Thank you very much. You can also use the Q&A window if you prefer. In our last class, chapter 18, the Yoga of Perfect Renunciation, we answered the question, or at least I answered the question, if it's such a big secret, why am I telling you about it? We spoke about who should speak on the secret and the more secret and the most secret and the most secret of all secrets. And why should one speak about these secrets if Krishna says these are the most confidential secrets that there are? And who should one speak to about these secrets? We covered verses 67 to 71. Tonight's class, we look at where Arjuna is at on the path of the hero's journey. We will see how this whole experience has totally blown Sanjaya's mind, and we will conclude our study of the Bhagavad-gita and therefore look at the conclusion of the Bhagavad-gita. One of the Bhagavad-gita's functions is to provide us with the Siddhanta, the philosophical conclusion of all the Vedic literatures. So we will find out about the conclusion of the Bhagavad-gita, and therefore, in summary, we will have reached the conclusion of all Vedic knowledge. I think that is a pretty nice accomplishment after only 108 classes. I will also, as a special bonus, now that we've had over 108 hours of teachings on the Bhagavad-gita, I will teach you the entire Bhagavad-gita in 4 minutes. But first, we will chant our invocation mantra. So some of you may be seeing the transliterated Sanskrit for the first time, Sanskrit rendered in the Roman alphabet. So, by manner of explanation, a dot over an M is a diacritic mark indicating that in addition to closing our lips together, as we always do with an M sound, we will also close the back of our tongue to the back of the roof of our mouths at the same time, making a kind of wrap your mouth around a walnut shape. A bar over a vowel, in this case an A, indicates a long and open version of that vowel as opposed to without a bar, which means you get a short and more compressed version of that vowel. And with that, I will chant, and if you like, you can chant this mantra back. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Translation: I offer my respects to the Supreme Person, the Son of Vasudeva, who is the all-pervading transcendence, and who is also Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, known as Vasudeva. Last week, 4 processes of bhakti yoga. We discussed Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam. So this phrase does not actually appear in the Bhagavad-gita, but it refers to the processes of bhakti yoga, and bhakti yoga, as we have already discussed, is the form of yoga that it resides at the top of the yoga ladder, and that encompasses all of the other processes of yoga, karma yoga, dhyana yoga, and jnana yoga, that is to say the yoga of action, the yoga of meditation, and the yoga of knowledge. They're all contained within bhakti yoga. Therefore, directly engaging in bhakti yoga, as per Krishna's emphasis throughout the Bhagavad-gita, is recommended. You get the benefits of all the other processes automatically. So, first process is hearing, which is what you've been doing as I have been speaking the Bhagavad-gita, and what I've been doing before I speak the Bhagavad-gita, or, to put it another way, before I chant the Bhagavad-gita. Hearing comes first. So hearing, and then chanting what you have heard. In order to really be able to chant what you have heard nicely, it's helpful to remember it, and preparing classes is a good way to remember. There are so many other ways to remember what we have heard. For example, Krishna gives so many ways to associate aspects of the material world with him. Of fishes I am the shark, of secrets I am silence, of purifiers I am the wind, etc. So even when we look around the world, just around what we see around us, we can also remember Krishna and Krishna's teachings about the qualities of material nature. And then serving. And we spoke last week about the highest service, which is to repeat what we have heard to those who are interested in hearing it. In the 71st verse of the 18th chapter, we heard Krishna say, even those who simply hear with faith, being free from envy, they too shall attain liberation and dwell in a world of abundance amongst those whose deeds are pure. You never know who those people are going to be. And therefore, it's incumbent upon someone who has heard and understood the message of the Bhagavad-gita to share it with others according to their capacity and opportunity, so that people just have the chance to hear this message. You never know who's been waiting their whole life to hear this. I've had a few different objectives, some goals that I wanted to meet in offering these classes. One of them was to make sure that I wore a different shirt every Thursday so that I never wore the same shirt twice in a row. I think I may have messed that up a couple of times, but not much. I also wanted to give the class consistently every Thursday night. And I think I only missed 6 Thursday nights in 2 years. 2 of those Thursday nights was because 2 years in a row, American Thanksgiving fell on a Thursday. Maybe that's because it was a leap year in 2018 or something. And then 2 I missed because India, we were in India, so I couldn't do that. So really only 2 that I actually missed. So that's not bad. My real goal was to present the Bhagavad-gita as I have heard it from my teachers without any mental speculation of my own, and according to how I have realized these teachings in my own life. And any of us can do that. You don't have to know the whole Bhagavad-gita. You just have to do your best to practice what you know. And that gives us the opportunity to perform the greatest service. The best way to remember what you've heard is to tell someone else what you've heard and share your personal realization of what you've heard. And doing that is the greatest service. According to Krishna, one who reveals this supreme secret of his to those who are devoted to him engages in the greatest offering of love to him and will surely come to him. And further, he says that no human being is as dear to me as one such as this, nor will there ever be anyone on earth whom I will love so dearly. So that's pretty far out. Sanjaya is about to reveal what's in store for anyone who takes up this service, which brings us to this week's verses, and I will read through the translation of these verses, and then we'll go back and look at each of these verses in more detail. So, here we go. Text 72. O son of Prita, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind? And are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled? Text 73. Arjuna said, by your grace, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory and now stand firm and free from doubt. I am prepared to act according to your word. Text 74. Sanjaya said, thus have I heard the conversation of two great souls, the son of Vasudeva and Arjuna. And so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end. Text 75. By the mercy of Vyasa, I have heard these most confidential talks directly from the master of all mysticism, Krishna, who was speaking personally to Arjuna. Text 76. O king, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure, being thrilled at every moment. Text 77. O king, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, I am struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again. Text 78. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of mystic yoga, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. This is my conclusion. So now we will go back and look at each verse in detail. And if at any point in time you have any questions or comments, want to share a reflection or a realization, then please feel free to pop your question or comment into the chat window. All right, so going back to 72. Translation, O son of Prita, O conqueror of wealth. This is now Krishna speaking to Arjuna. Have you heard this with an attentive mind? And are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled? So this is pretty similar to like the question I ask you at the end of every class, sort of. Whenever you have a question for me, I want to know, after I've given you my response, if that was a satisfactory answer. If you have any additional follow-up questions, anything else that you would like to know that I didn't cover. So Krishna is doing the same thing. You know, this is how a spiritual teacher rolls. Krishna is giving the example for all of us to follow, that you want to make certain that your audience has understood what you have said. The specific Sanskrit phrase that Krishna uses here is eka agrena chetasa. Cheta, like chitta, the mind. Eka, one, agrena, attention. So with full attention, complete focus, have I had your complete and undivided attention as I have shared all of this with you, basically is the question here. Or another way to put it, did you understand it? And then the second part of the question is, are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled? Do you accept it? So it's one thing to understand something, and it's another thing to accept it. And here, Krishna wants to make sure that Arjuna both understands the teachings, and the result of those teachings is that he is now free from ignorance and illusion. So let's go back and take a look at what Arjuna's ignorance and illusion consisted of. Back in the second chapter, the 7th through the 9th verse, Arjuna tells Krishna, after looking across the battlefield and seeing his grandfather and his teachers and his cousins and his family, friends, his own family on his side, after looking around and seeing who he has to fight and understanding, what the consequences will be for everyone on the battlefield, he tells Krishna, my heart is afflicted by a wretched weakness. My thoughts are in disarray as I try to ascertain which path is virtuous. In other words, he doesn't know what his dharma is right now. He doesn't know how to respond to his destiny. Therefore, I am asking you to tell me what course of action would serve the greatest good, which is really a nice indication of Arjuna's character. He's not interested in finding out how he can win. He's not interested in, what's in it for me? How can I come out on top? His question is not about that at all. His question is, how can I serve the greatest good? So this is the kind of question that someone of high character will ask. Please tell me, for I am now your disciple, a soul surrendered to you. So this is the turning point in Krishna and Arjuna's relationship with Krishna. Now they're going from friends to disciple and spiritual master. And Arjuna is the one who is initiating this by taking the submissive position. Arjuna continues, I cannot envision how the grief that is drying up my senses might be dispelled, for it will remain even if I win an earthly kingdom of unrivaled affluence and reign with sovereignty on par with the celestial beings. Then Sanjaya, reporting back to the blind king Dhritarashtra, who has inquired, what did my sons and the sons of my late brother Pandu do when they gathered on the battlefield prepared to fight? Sanjaya says, having thus spoken to the Lord of the senses, Krishna, the conqueror of sleep, who scorches his foes, Arjuna, said, O Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. This was very good news for Dhritarashtra. At the time, he's thinking, this is great. Arjuna's not going to fight. My sons will win. If they don't fight. Now, Dhritarashtra gets the bad news, at least from his standpoint, in this next verse, which we will chant. So this is going to be verse 73. And I will explain a little bit more about the diacritics. A C is always a CH sound, sounded with the tongue curled up into the center of the roof of the mouth. A dot under an S is an SH sound, as in she. A dot under a T is a T sound with the tip of the tongue also bouncing off of the center of the roof of the mouth instead of from behind one's teeth. So ta, the sound comes from the bottom of your tongue rather than the top of your tongue behind your teeth. Dot under an H is a short stop on the vowel that precedes it, unless the dot under the H is at the end of a word, at the end of a line. In that case, you echo a short version of the vowel that precedes the H back. Dot under an R, same spot, curling your tongue back into the center or a little further than the center of the roof of your mouth. You always pronounce each letter that you see, so letters do not combine to create new sounds. So a TH is a T as opposed to th. An apostrophe before a word indicates a dropped vowel. That just means that the vowel at the end of the previous word will flow directly into it. And I think that covers it. So I will chant each line, and if you like, you can chant each line back. Arjuna uvacha nashto moha smritir labdha tvat prasadan mayachyuta stithosmi gatta sandeha karisye vachanam tava Translation. Arjuna said, "By your grace, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory and now stand firm and free from doubt. I am prepared to act according to your word." So the answer to Krishna's questions were yes and yes. I heard everything with rapt attention, and I accept it. I am now prepared to act according to your direction, which is to fight, and that is obviously bad news for Dhritarashtra. Go back to the verse, and let's take a closer look at some of the Sanskrit in this verse. The word moha is significant. Moha means illusion. And illusion is understood to mean the obfuscation of absolute knowledge, or making absolute knowledge invisible, and replacing it with distorted knowledge. So illusion is distorted knowledge that gives rise to false conceptions of relationships. Knowledge of relationships is the first category of knowledge in the Vedic system of knowledge. So that's the first thing that goes when you fall under the influence of illusion. You don't really understand your relationships to your family, your friends, to your body, to your country, to your planet, etc. That all becomes distorted. It also gives a false conception of the limitations of your free will. You think you can do a lot more than you can. You think your freedom to decide is a lot broader than it actually is. And the worst part is that distorted knowledge gives rise to more distorted knowledge. So distorted knowledge has a way of being self-perpetuating. And therefore, it is very difficult to overcome illusion, because illusion perpetuates illusion. However, tvat prasadan, by your grace. Tvat is a short form of tvatvam, indicating eternal spiritual truth. So by your grace, prasada is mercy. So by the mercy of eternal spiritual truth that Krishna has given is the deeper understanding of this particular phrase. By that, Arjuna has regained his memory, which means he remembers now who he is. He also remembers his relationship with Krishna. He knows who Krishna is and what that relationship is. So back in the second chapter, we heard how illusion rolls out. There's a sequence that we go through which we fall into illusion. That's in verses 62 and 63 of the second chapter. And it goes like this. When one's thoughts dwell on objects that attract the senses, then attachment to those objects develops. From attachment to such sense objects, the desire to satisfy the senses is born, and from the desire to satisfy the material senses, anger arises. Anger gives rise to bewilderment, and with bewilderment comes loss of memory. When one's memory is lost, the power of discernment is lost with it, and as the power of discernment recedes, the self vanishes from view. There you have the sequence of how we all fall into this state of ignorance and illusion that Krishna has inquired about from Arjuna, asking, have I dispelled this ignorance and illusion? So here's the sequence that Krishna has essentially put in motion by revealing the truth about himself and the nature of the world to Arjuna. Because remember, the main instruction is always think of me, become my devotee, offer your reverence to me, think of me within yourself. The wise are always chanting my glories and worshiping me with all their heart. The essential and climactic teaching here is to offer oneself to Krishna and make Krishna the object of one's constant meditation. So now here's how Krishna has, by revealing himself and revealing the true nature of his relationship with Arjuna, and by extension, the true relationship between everyone, all of us, and Krishna, here's how Krishna has reverse engineered that process in order to bring Arjuna to the point of enlightenment. When one's thoughts dwell on Krishna, the all-attractive personality of Godhead, attachment to Krishna develops. From attachment to Krishna, the desire to satisfy Krishna is born, and from the desire to satisfy Krishna, contentment arises. Contentment gives rise to clarity, and with clarity comes a restoration of memory. When one's memory is restored, the power of discernment is restored with it. And as the power of discernment returns, the self appears in one's view. So that's how Krishna has reverse engineered that process of illusion. Finally, Arjuna tells Krishna, I am prepared to act on your word. So, because Arjuna understands the relationship, his relationship, he understands that he's an infinitesimal part of Krishna, who is the infinite and complete whole. And it's his constitutional dharma, his constitutional position, to be a servant of the complete whole, just as any part of a complete whole serves the complete whole as their natural function. And he's understood also that our choice, his choice and ours, is to either serve the illusory energy of Krishna or to serve Krishna directly. If he serves Krishna directly by engaging in this battle that initially he wasn't so interested in, then he's actually, paradoxically in some respects, acting according to his normal liberated condition, and at the same time acting according to his material nature, which is to be a warrior. Therefore, he has found a way to harmonize his material nature, his conditional dharma, with his constitutional nature, or his eternal dharma, which is to be a servant of the Supreme Person. Therefore, if Arjuna had hung on to his illusion, he would have been under the illusion that he was the one who was controlling everything, that he could be the master of the world, that he could control the outcome of events. But in actuality, he was just becoming, he would have just become more entangled in the complexities of material nature by the endeavor to control them. And thinking you can control them when in fact you're becoming more entangled by them is the essence of illusion. So let's see where Arjuna is at. At this point, well, at the beginning, we saw that he was being called to an adventure reluctantly, as is usually the case with a hero. Chapters 1 and the beginning of chapter 2 is where this call to adventure is, when Arjuna tells Krishna to bring his chariot into the middle of the battlefield so he can see everyone who's here. That is where the call to adventure takes place, in the center of the battlefield. So this is what Arjuna knows. The world that he knows is his family, his friends, this ongoing struggle with his cousins. And he sees that that is all at risk, that this battle will put his whole known world at risk. Chapters 2 through 9 take him into the unknown. So once we begin Krishna's instructions in the second chapter, Krishna, of course, is the supernatural aid, and he takes Arjuna into a world that he hadn't really considered or that he'd forgotten, and begins a process of transformation from material consciousness to spiritual consciousness. And during this portion of the Gita, Arjuna is asking doubt-based questions, questions where he needs to have his doubts dispelled, and therefore challenges and temptations arise. As we get into the 10th chapter, we get the midpoint of the Bhagavad-gita and the revelation. And the 11th chapter puts an exclamation point on Krishna's position as the supreme person, because at the point of the 10th chapter, Arjuna says, okay, I accept what you have told me. You are the Supreme Person. Can you show me how you are the Supreme Person? And the revelation of the universal form puts an exclamation mark on Krishna's divinity, and Arjuna offers prayers asking for forgiveness for being so casual with Krishna as his friend and cousin. So hence atonement. And then finally, chapters 13 through 18 take us to the conclusion where Arjuna is asking faith-based questions as he prepares to return to the known world, but now as a different person, operating with a different set of motivations, doing exactly what he thought he was going to do at the beginning of the day before this conversation took place, but now doing it for different reasons. Not really the same person who asked Krishna to drive his chariot out to the middle of the battlefield. So if you have any questions or comments about anything up to this point, please let me know by typing something into the chat. And while I await for your questions and comments, I will continue with the 74th verse of this chapter. We have heard the last from Krishna and Arjuna. Those are the last two lines spoken by Krishna and Arjuna in the Bhagavad-gita. Krishna checks in. You doing okay? Got everything now? We good? And Arjuna replies, yep, good to go. And we return to Sanjaya, the narrator of the Bhagavad-gita, who will wrap things up for us from the 74th verse on. Sanjaya said, "Thus I have heard the conversation of two great souls, the son of Vasudeva and Arjuna. And so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end." So Sanjaya has had a totally mind-blowing experience. The Sanskrit phrase in this verse, Roma Harshanam, means thrilling to the point of making the hair stand on end, or electrifying. And that shouldn't be so surprising, because Sanjaya just got to basically eavesdrop on a conversation where God speaks about himself and his energies to a living being, Arjuna, who's qualified by the absence of envy and his devotion to Krishna, but other than that is like you and me, a living entity, little tiny particle of spirit lost in the material world. So this is a special feature of the Bhagavad-gita, because, you know, the person who's most qualified to speak about you is you. And the person who's most qualified to speak about me is me. There may be one other person I can think of who could be more qualified. But for sure, the most qualified person to speak about God is God. And that is what we just got in the Bhagavad-gita. And where else do you hear that? You know, in most other scripture, we hear someone else talking about God. There's not a whole lot of God revealing himself, or herself, or itself, or all three in this case. But here, that's exactly what we have. We have the personal form, the person who is qualified to hold the position of God, speaking about who he is and what he's about and how his energies work. That's pretty amazing. And if we follow in Arjuna's footsteps, then we can understand Krishna in that same way and also have our hair stand on end. That's how far out it is. Sanjaya realizes the implications of what he has just heard. And even though this is all very bad news for Dhritarashtra, his boss, he's just like really blissed out at this point as he shares his realization of what he's just heard. Unfortunately, Dhritarashtra is in such a fallen state, being filled with the desire for his sons to inherit the kingdom, basically coveting what is rightfully belongs to Arjuna and his brothers, that he is not qualified to have the same experience that Sanjaya is having. Sanjaya continues, by the mercy of Vyasa, I have heard these most confidential talks directly from the master of all mysticism, Krishna, who was speaking personally to Arjuna. So here's what Sanjaya is referring to here. This is kind of trickle-down mercy. Trickle-down economics, we know, does not work. But trickle-down mercy does. What I mean by that is there is a system of the transparent communication of spiritual knowledge called parampara, literally one after the other, by which someone who is qualified to hear then speaks to someone who is qualified to hear, who becomes qualified to speak, and so on and so on. So in this case, Vyasa refers to Vyasadeva, the scribe of Vedic literature, who is also Sanjaya's guru. And Sanjaya was given the power of clairaudience, similar to clairvoyance. Sanjaya can see and hear what's going on in places far away. He can actually direct his sense of hearing and seeing to distant places, mystic power. And by virtue of this facility given to him by his guru, he was able to hear the Bhagavad-gita and see Krishna's form, see the conversation taking place. So this speaks to the role of the spiritual master or the teacher. The teacher is supposed to be a transparent medium through which the disciple or student has a direct experience of the teaching. The teacher is not supposed to get in the way of the teaching. The teacher is simply supposed to deliver the teaching without changing it, but not like a game of telephone, not changing it. Delivering the essence of the message in a way that's suitable for time, place, and circumstance so that whoever is hearing the message has a direct experience of that message. And that's kind of the mystery of this idea of disciplic succession, or this one after the other. Spiritual teacher teaches, the student becomes the student becomes the teacher, etc. So if one hears from someone who's an authentic teacher in this way, then what should happen is you should actually be able to hear the Gita directly the same way that Arjuna heard it from Krishna. So when we think about this, what that means is, Krishna, we're eavesdropping on a conversation between God and God's best friend. And because God is omniscient, God knows we're eavesdropping. It's actually, we're invited to eavesdrop, which means that we are also in a position of being God's best friend. Or at least the potential. If we are to receive the teachings of the Bhagavad-gita the same way that Arjuna has received them, then we also attain that same relative position. That is to say, the same relationship with Krishna that Arjuna has, we can also have. Qualitatively, every relationship is individual and therefore different, but in terms of the level of proximity and the degree to which we can experience that intimate relationship with God, it's available to us. Which brings us to verse 76. Sanjaya continues, O king, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure being thrilled at every moment. So this is the effect of repeatedly remembering Krishna's teachings. You're thrilled at every moment, not just some moments, every moment. And if we engage in that act of conscious remembrance of Krishna's teachings for the sake of being able to teach it to others, then we also will have not only the thrill of remembering those teachings, but the even bigger thrill of transmitting those teachings. Which is one of the reasons why I started this series of classes, because I wanted to experience the thrill of teaching this, which required that I remember it, which required that I hear it again and again and again. Which brings us to verse 77. O king, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, I am struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again. So here, I'll refer to the commentary of one of the teachers or acharyas of one of the Vaishnava sampradayas or lineages, Ramanuja. There's a Sanskrit phrase in this verse, Rupam Atyadbhutam, which refers to the Vishvarupa, or the universal form. So you'll remember back in chapter 11, Krishna revealed this universal form to Arjuna, and Sanjaya could also see it. And what Sanjaya now is recalling is this mind-blowing form that he observed in complete astonishment by the power of his clairvoyance, his celestial vision. As he meditated on this, as he remembered this astonishing form, unlimited form of all things in all places, all in one place, all time, at the same time, completely beyond conception. Therefore, Krishna is called achintya, inconceivable. He becomes rapturous, he becomes ecstatic at the recollection of the magnificence of this spectacular form. Which brings us to verse 78, which we will chant. The final verse of the Bhagavad-gita. A accent mark over an S is also an SH sound, but it's a different kind of SH sound. It's sounded all the way back towards the hinge of one's jaw. So you're going to curl your tongue all the way back, as opposed to a regular SH sound. Dots under R's and S's we have already described. A dot under an N, also in the same place, curling the tongue up to about halfway to 2/3 of the way back in the roof of one's mouth, as opposed to behind your teeth. Again, you sound each letter, so no combined sounds, no sounds that are a combination of two letters together. And that will do it. So once again, I will chant, and if you like, you can chant back. Yatra Yogeshvara Krishna Yatra Partho Dhanur Daraha Tatra Shirir Vijayo Bhutir Dhruvani Tirmatir Mama. Translation once again. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of mystic yoga, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, morality. This is my conclusion. So taking a closer look at the Sanskrit in this verse, the first word we'll look at is Yogeshvara. So this is a compound word, yoga plus Ishvara. Yoga means yoga, or in this case, mystic yoga. And Ishvara is a philosophical word for the supreme being, or literally means controller or master of. Therefore, Yogeshvara means the master of mystic yoga, who is Krishna. And Dhanurdhara, the carrier of the bow and arrow, name for Arjuna. So you have the master of mystic yoga, the supreme lord of mystic yoga, and you have an archer, a warrior, someone who is carrying weapons. Well, you know, yoga is not always about coming together, finding common ground, listening to the other side, understanding how we're all one, etc. Sometimes you want to do that. You want to see if there's a possibility of having everyone get together right now. Love everyone. Everyone gets along. Sometimes that's just not possible. Sometimes you have to understand the difference between right and wrong and fight for what's right. So, this is one of those times. This is why Arjuna has to fight. He's on the side of right. He's on the side of Dharma. Krishna appears specifically for the purpose of protecting his devotees and reestablishing Dharma or righteousness when it wanes. Dhritarashtra wants to know who's going to win, and now he knows that it's not going to be his sons, because Vijayo and Matir. So Vijaya, victory, like Ujjayi breath, victorious breathing. Vijay, super victory. Not just Jai, but Vijay, big victory. And Niti means morality. Whoops, I actually should have said Nitir. You will ignore this mistake. You will pretend that it never happened. You will forget that you saw me make that correction. Niti, morality. So victory and morality are two things that go together. This is why it is incumbent upon a leader in any kind of fight to have a functioning moral compass, to understand what dharma is, what right is, and do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because it's going to be the thing that fulfills your desires. Hence, in the beginning, Arjuna asks, how can I serve the greatest good? Once again, a reflection on Arjuna's character, that he is the one, and his brothers are the ones who are on the side of Dharma in this case. If one understands Krishna, then all other departments of knowledge are going to be covered, because everything is contained within Krishna. There's nothing beyond Krishna. So in the Gita we find we have 5 principal subjects that have been discussed. Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead; material nature, his external energy; the living entities, his spiritual energy; eternal time, and action, all kinds of activities. And all of it is completely dependent on the Supreme Person, Krishna, but Krishna is not dependent on any of it. He is the Supreme Independent. And all the different conceptions of Krishna, that is to say, you're welcome, Jessica. That is to say, the different aspects of Krishna in terms of Brahman, the spiritual substratum of existence, Paramatma, the localized aspect of the Supreme Person within the heart and within each atomic particle of matter. They all exist within the category of understanding Krishna, the Supreme Person. So although it may seem that Krishna and the living entity, material nature and time, these all appear to be different. Action, they seem to be all different things, and yet there is nothing different from the Supreme Person. But the Supreme Person is different from everything. And that relationship of the Supreme Person to everything is the ultimate understanding of the Bhagavad-gita, which at 8:56, with 4 minutes left before this class ends, is what I'm going to teach you. The whole thing in 4 minutes. Here we go. How should we respond to our destiny, a life in a world where death is inevitable? First, understand that there has never been a time when Krishna did not exist, nor one where you did not exist, nor one when everyone else did not exist, nor is there any possibility that in the future any of us shall ever cease to be. Krishna tells us that just as an embodied person experiences the transformations of their body from childhood to youth to old age, the same person will pass into another body at death, and those who are wise do not find this bewildering. One who is bewildered by the influence of false ego thinks, I am the doer of activities. In actuality, all activities are carried out by the three qualities of material nature. This divine power of illusion, my divine power of illusion, composed of these qualities of material nature, is nearly impossible to overcome. But those who offer themselves to me can easily cross over beyond this bewildering power. But I don't reveal myself to everyone. Being hidden by my divine power of illusion, this bewildered world does not recognize me, who am unborn and infallible. But, O son of Prita, those great souls who take refuge in my divine nature offer their love to me, with their minds focused exclusively on me because they know me as the imperishable origin of all beings. Always glorifying me, endeavoring with great determination, and honoring me by their devotion, they worship me in a state of perpetual union. I am the source of everything, Krishna tells us. Everything emanates from me. Those who are wise, whose knowledge is perfect, serve me with devotion and worship me with all their heart. With their thoughts dwelling in me and every breath of life offered to me, those who are devoted to me experience complete satisfaction and transcendental bliss by continually enlightening one another and speaking about me. To those who are always associating with me through offerings of devotional affection, I illuminate the path by which they can come to me. Feeling especially compassionate for those who are devoted to me, I, dwelling in their hearts, dispel the darkness born of ignorance with the radiant lamp of knowledge. Those who thus see with eyes of knowledge the difference between the field and the knower of the field, that is to say, the body, and the knower of the body, the self, and who can understand the process of liberation from the influence of material nature, attains to the supreme. By taking shelter of this knowledge, one can attain the same nature as my own. One so situated does not take birth at the time of creation, nor are they disturbed at the time of destruction. One can understand me as I am only by devotional service. Knowing me in truth, one thereupon returns to me. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. Hear once more my ultimate message, the greatest of all secrets. Because you are my very dear friend, I am speaking for the sake of your well-being. Direct your mind toward me, become my devotee, offer your sacrifices to me, and act in reverence to me. Thus you will surely come to me. I promise you this because you are so loved by me. Abandon all varieties of righteousness and come to me alone for shelter. I shall free you from all misfortune. Do not fear. There you go. 4 minutes. Questions? Oh, thank you, Shana. I will include those verses that I just recited from the Bhagavad-gita, which give you the Gita in a nutshell, so you will have them for your reference. Annie, so where do we go from here? What is the next steps on this path in terms of study and practice? This is a beginning or a crossroads, certainly not an ending, but I am not sure how best to proceed. I am committed to doing so, but need further direction. Annie, thank you so much for that very wonderful question. So the answer, and we will run over a few minutes so that I can share this answer with you. Krishna has offered us some practical things. For starters, we all have to eat. Whatever you eat, whatever offer you offer or give away, whatever you do, make that an offering to me. So start with something simple. You can have a special plate that you use just for offerings of food. Set up a sacred space, little picture of Krishna and Radha and Krishna, the Hare of Hare Krishna is best, or something that reminds you of Krishna, that for you is, the symbol of, or the representation of Krishna. And then before you consume whatever you cook it with the idea that you're cooking this for God. Take a moment to make an offering from your heart. Wait a few minutes for Krishna to enjoy the delicious meal that you have prepared, and then take the plates away, put everything back in the pots, clean the special plate, and now you've got prasadam. Remember, the word prasada means mercy. So this is called prasadam. Food that has been offered purifies or spiritualizes your material body. So that's an activity. Then always think of me. So set aside some time in the morning, perhaps, for mantra meditation, for thinking of Krishna's name, Krishna's form, Krishna's instructions. Simply reading the Bhagavad-gita is devotional service. So every day, read a little bit of the Bhagavad-gita, and therefore give yourself the opportunity to absorb your mind in Krishna's instructions, in the pastimes of Krishna and Arjuna. These are ways to start. And then remember, Krishna says, I illuminate the path. I illuminate the way to come to me from within your heart. Try those simple things and watch what happens. Just see. If you start getting telegrams from Krishna from within your heart, letting you know what to do next. I hope that is satisfactory for the moment. Glenna, you're very welcome, of course. It has been my pleasure to share this with you. So we've done the Bhagavad-gita in 4 minutes, and we have looked at Arjuna and the hero's journey, how Sanjaya's mind has been blown by this experience. And we've heard the conclusion of the Bhagavad-gita in verses 72 through 78. Now, normally, I ask for questions, and of course, I would still like very much to hear from you about any questions that you have. And you can always reach me at hari@harikirtan.com, henceforth and forevermore, with any questions. And, I'm seeing your wonderful messages in the chat, and I'm very, very grateful for all of you being here and for how you have received this project. Normally, right about now, I would say next week, we're going to do this. But, I don't know what I'm going to do next week. It's going to be my first Thursday night off in like over 2 years. Maybe I'll watch a movie. Because, I'm a guy, and, modes of material nature, you have to act according to your nature. When I watch any movie, of course, I'm going to be thinking like that every superhero in the Marvel universe, which I have not actually figured out like what order to watch all those films in order to figure out like how it all goes together. But, I'll know that their power comes from Krishna. I'll know that whatever ability they have, that will come from Krishna. I'll just associate that with Krishna. I haven't seen that last Terminator movie. So, I'm a guy who likes things that blow up, like car chases. I like, movies that guys like because I'm just a guy in this life. And I'll understand, that Krishna in the form of time comes to destroy everything. I don't know, maybe that's what I'll do. Anyway, but I know that Thursday night is a good night for you. And I know that I really enjoy spending this time with you. So here's the promise that I'm going to make to you. I'll be back. Yeah, I do Star Trek. In fact, well, I like the original series. It's on at 8 o'clock. I missed it. Anyway, all right. Thank you all very, very much for being here with me. It is an honor to have you here with me, a great pleasure for me to be here with you. I look forward to seeing you all again soon. You're very, very welcome. All right. Ending meeting for all. Have a nice night.